Hey, deep divers. Welcome to another deep dive.
Oh, it's great to be back.
Today we're going to be talking about The Theory of Moral Sentiments by Adam Smith,
Yes.
um, and specifically how it can change your life.
Right.
We're looking at chapter 1 from the book, How Adam Smith Can Change Your Life.
Okay.
And, I think a lot of times people only know Adam Smith from The Wealth of Nations.
Right.
But The Theory of Moral Sentiments is really where he talks about a lot of the stuff that applies to just living a good life and how
Yeah.
to think about how to be a good person, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, the theory of moral sentiments is often overlooked, but it's a fascinating exploration of human nature and morality.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really struck me when I first started reading this was the very first line of the book is so powerful.
Oh, yeah.
It says, "How selfish soever man may be supposed, there are evidently some principles in his nature which interest him in the fortune of others, and render their happiness necessary to him, though he derives nothing from it except the pleasure of seeing it." That's such a powerful statement because it's like right off the bat, he's challenging this idea
Yeah.
that we're all just inherently selfish beings.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key insights from Smith. He recognized that while self-interest is a powerful motivator, we also have this innate capacity for empathy and compassion.
Right. It's like we're not just these cold calculating machines. We actually care about other people.
Exactly. And that empathy is really the foundation of his whole theory of morality.
Yeah, and that's something I found really refreshing about this book. It's not like some dry philosophical treatise. It's actually very relatable.
Yeah.
Um, I will admit the writing style took me a little while to get used to.
Yeah.
It's 18th century prose.
Right.
But once I kind of got into the rhythm of it, it's actually quite beautiful and very insightful.
It's definitely worth the effort. The language might be a bit archaic, but the ideas are timeless.
Yeah, and one of the concepts that I found really helpful was this idea of the impartial spectator.
Oh, yes.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So the impartial spectator is this sort of imaginary figure that Smith uses to represent our conscience.
Okay.
It's this voice inside our head that helps us judge our own actions and make moral decisions.
So it's like having this wise observer who's always watching us and giving us feedback.
Exactly. And it's not just about following societal rules or what other people tell us is right or wrong. It's about developing this internal moral compass that guides our actions.
That's so interesting because it's like we're not just relying on external sources for our morality.
Yeah.
We're actually cultivating this inner sense of right and wrong.
Right. And that internal compass is what allows us to make choices that are truly aligned with our values.
So it's not just about being good for the sake of being good. It's about being good because it's genuinely what we believe in.
Exactly. And because it leads to a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
So how does this impartial spectator idea play out in our everyday lives?
Well, for example, let's say you're faced with a difficult decision. Maybe it's a moral dilemma or a choice between doing what's easy and what's right. Okay. The impartial spectator would encourage you to step back from your immediate emotions and consider the situation from a more objective perspective.
So it's like taking a pause and really thinking things through before we act.
Exactly. It's about weighing the consequences of our actions, both for ourselves and for others.
So it's not just about what we want in the moment. It's about what's truly best in the long run.
Right. And what aligns with our deepest values.
Yeah, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. You know how we're constantly bombarded with messages about what we should be doing, what we should be buying, how we should be living.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And it's so easy to get caught up in all of that and lose sight of what really matters.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the challenges of living in today's world. We're constantly being pulled in so many different directions.
Right. And so this idea of the impartial spectator can be really helpful in navigating all of that noise and staying true to ourselves.
Yeah, it's like having a filter that helps us discern what's truly important from what's just superficial.
And one of the things that I found really interesting in the book was how Smith applies this idea of the impartial spectator to our understanding of happiness
Oh, yeah.
and how we often pursue things that we think will make us happy, but actually end up leaving us feeling empty.
Right.
For example, he talks about how people often chase after fame and fortune, thinking that those things will bring them lasting happiness.
Right.
But he argues that true happiness doesn't come from external validation. It comes from living a virtuous life.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key insights from Smith. He understood that true happiness is not about what we have, but about who we are.
So it's not about the stuff. It's about the substance.
Exactly. It's about living in accordance with our values
Yeah.
and making choices that align with our moral compass.
And I think that's a really powerful message, especially in today's world, where we're so often bombarded with messages about what we should be buying and what we should be achieving.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that true fulfillment comes from within.
Yeah, and it's not just about our own personal happiness. It's also about how we relate to others,
Right.
how we can create a more just and compassionate society.
Yeah. Smith believed that our capacity for empathy and benevolence is essential to the flourishing of society as a whole.
So it's not just about me versus you. It's about us.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our interconnectedness and working together for the common good.
And this is where I think Smith's work gets really interesting. Because he's not just talking about morality in this abstract philosophical sense.
Right.
He's actually connecting it to economics, to the choices we make about how we spend our money and how we interact with the market.
Yeah, he saw economics and morality as being deeply intertwined.
So how does that work?
Yeah.
How does economics play into all of this?
Well, think about it this way. Every economic decision we make is also a moral decision
Okay.
because it involves choices about how we allocate our resources and how we impact the lives of others.
So it's not just about maximizing our own profits. It's about considering the broader consequences of our actions.
Exactly. And this is where the concept of opportunity cost comes in.
Okay.
Every choice we make means foregoing other possibilities.
Right. So it's about weighing those trade-offs and making choices that align with our values.
Exactly. And that's something that's often missing from the traditional economic discourse.
Yeah, I think a lot of times economics is presented as this kind of cold, calculating field where it's all about maximizing self-interest.
Right.
But Smith's work suggests that there's actually a lot more to it than that.
Absolutely. He believed that economics should be about more than just money. It should be about promoting human flourishing and creating a more just and equitable society.
Wow, this is all so insightful.
Yeah.
I'm really starting to see how Smith's ideas can be applied to so many different aspects of our lives.
Yeah. His work has a way of making us think differently about ourselves and the world around us.
And it's not just theoretical, it's actually very practical.
Right. It gives us concrete tools and frameworks for making better choices.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dive deeper into this
Let's do it.
and see how we can use Smith's insights to live more fulfilling and meaningful lives.
Absolutely. There's so much more to explore.
Okay, so stay tuned, deep divers. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back.
Sounds good. It's fascinating how Smith connects economics to morality. He doesn't see them as separate disciplines, but rather as interconnected aspects of human behavior.
Yeah, I'm starting to see that too. Like by understanding our own motivations and the choices we make, we can not only improve our financial well-being, but also live more ethical and fulfilling lives.
Exactly. And this leads us to another important concept in Smith's work, the idea of self-command. He believed that the ability to control our passions and desires is essential to living a virtuous life.
Self-command, that sounds pretty challenging, especially in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with temptations and distractions.
Yeah. It's definitely not easy. And Smith acknowledged that he understood that humans are naturally drawn to pleasure and averse to pain. But he also believed that through reason and reflection, we can develop the self-discipline needed to make choices that align with our long-term well-being.
So it's not about denying our desires altogether. It's about finding a healthy balance, right? Learning to manage our impulses so they don't control us.
Precisely. It's about making deliberate choices that are in our best interest, even when they require us to resist immediate gratification.
That reminds me of something I read in the book about how Smith viewed the pursuit of wealth. He didn't condemn it outright, but he cautioned against becoming consumed by it.
That's right. Smith recognized that wealth can provide security and comfort, but he also warned against the dangers of placing too much importance on material possessions. He saw how the relentless pursuit of wealth could lead to greed, envy, and a loss of connection with what truly matters in life.
It's almost like he's foreshadowing our modern-day obsession with consumerism. We're constantly bombarded with messages telling us we need more stuff to be happy. But Smith's work suggests that true happiness lies in something much deeper in living a life of virtue and purpose.
Yes, and this brings us back to the concept of the impartial spectator. It can help us make choices that are not driven by fleeting desires or the need for external validation. It encourages us to ask ourselves, is this choice aligned with my values? Will it contribute to my long-term happiness and well-being?
It's like having a wise friend inside our heads, guiding us towards a path of greater fulfillment.
That's a great analogy, and remember, Smith believed that cultivating this inner voice requires ongoing effort. It's a process of self-reflection, of constantly examining our motivations and striving to make choices that align with our highest ideals.
It's interesting to think about how these ideas apply to our relationships with others. I mean, if we're constantly focused on our own self-interest, How can we build genuine connections and contribute to the well-being of those around us?
That's a crucial point. Smith believed that our capacity for sympathy is not only essential to our own moral development, but also to the flourishing of society as a whole.
So it's not just about being a good person in isolation. It's about recognizing that we're part of a larger community and that our actions have ripple effects.
Exactly. Smith argued that by cultivating empathy and acting with benevolence toward others, we create a more just and harmonious society, and this in turn contributes to our own happiness and well-being.
This is making me think about how sometimes we might justify selfish actions by saying, well, everyone else is doing it. But Smith's work suggests that we have a responsibility to hold ourselves to a higher standard, even when it's difficult.
That's right. Smith recognized that moral progress is an ongoing journey, both individually and collectively, and it requires us to challenge conventional wisdom, to examine our own biases, and to strive to make choices that are not simply self-serving, but also contribute to the greater good.
This is all so insightful. I'm really starting to appreciate how Smith's work provides a framework for thinking about not only economics, but also ethics, morality, and the pursuit of a truly fulfilling life.
It's amazing how relevant his ideas remain even centuries later, and it's a testament to his deep understanding of human nature.
I'm eager to hear more about how these ideas can be applied to specific challenges we face in today's world. For example, how can we navigate ambition and the pursuit of success without sacrificing our integrity or losing sight of what truly matters?
That's a great question, and one that Smith addresses directly in his work. He offers some insightful perspectives on how to balance ambition with virtue, and we'll delve into those in the next part of our deep dive.
So we were talking about ambition and success and how to make sure we don't, lose sight of what's really important along the way.
Yes, and this is where Smith's insights into happiness are so helpful. He really understood that true happiness doesn't come from external achievements or possessions. It's about living a virtuous life.
It's like that saying, right? It's not about having what you want. It's about wanting what you have.
Exactly. It's about finding contentment and fulfillment from within, rather than seeking it from outside sources.
So how do we do that? How do we cultivate that kind of inner peace and happiness, especially in a world that's so focused on external validation?
Well, Smith believed that self-awareness is key. We need to understand our own motivations and be honest with ourselves about why we're pursuing certain goals.
It's about asking ourselves those tough questions, right? Like, why am I really doing this? Is this truly important to me? Or am I just trying to impress someone else?
Precisely. It's about making sure our ambitions are aligned with our values and not driven by a need for external approval or a desire to keep up with the Joneses.
And I think that's so important because it's so easy to get caught up in that comparison game.
Hmm.
We see what other people are doing on social media or we hear about their successes, and it's easy to start feeling like we're not enough.
It's a trap that's easy to fall into, but Smith reminds us that true fulfillment comes from living authentically in accordance with our own values and aspirations.
So it's not about denying our ambitions or our desire for success. It's about approaching them with a sense of integrity and purpose.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that true success is not just about what we achieve, but how we achieve it.
And I think that's a really powerful message because it shifts the focus from the outcome to the process. It's about enjoying the journey and making sure that we're living in a way that feels good to us.
And that's where the idea of virtue comes in. Smith believed that living a virtuous life is essential to true happiness.
So it's not just about being a good person in some abstract moral sense. It's about actually living in a way that aligns with our values.
Exactly. It's about making choices that are kinded, compassionate, and just even when it's difficult.
It's about being the best version of ourselves that we can be.
Right, and that includes being mindful of our impact on others. Smith believed that our actions have ripple effects and that we have a responsibility to contribute to the well-being of society as a whole.
So it's not just about our own personal happiness. It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected and that our choices affect other people.
Exactly. It's about cultivating empathy and acting with benevolence towards others, even those who are different from us.
It's about building a world where everyone has the opportunity to flourish.
Right, and that starts with each one of us making conscious choices to live with intention and compassion.
Wow, this has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on what it means to live a good life.
I'm so glad to hear that Smith's ideas have a way of challenging us to think differently and to strive for something more meaningful.
And I think the biggest takeaway for me is that a good life is not about what we accumulate or achieve. It's about who we are as people and how we treat others.
It's about living with integrity, purpose, and a deep sense of connection to something larger than ourselves.
And I think that's something we can all aspire to no matter our circumstances or background.
Absolutely. It's a journey that's open to everyone, and it's a journey that's worth taking.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today for this deep dive into the theory of moral sentiments. I hope you found it as insightful and inspiring as I did.
It's been a pleasure.
And to all of our deep divers out there, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep striving to live a good life.
Until next time, happy diving.